The gigantic lift lines that we saw recently at places like Park City and in Vail are the result of the way that the company is looking at prioritizing profit, how they look at their shareholders, how they look at their priorities. And it's the customer who suffers when there's a misalignment. For full disclosure, I've been an Epic Pass holder since 1998, and I even this year have an Icon Pass. And so, this is a product that I'm very familiar with, but it also is an issue that I see in a lot of different businesses where the alignment of how you judge success, how much success do you really need to have as a business, and the way that you therefore bring in money, the way that you treat your employees, the way that you treat your facilities has everything to do with the relationship between all these different things. So when I say it's the customer who suffers, it's really because, regardless of all the different issues that led to this, labor disputes and distinct like lack of pay, it seems, at the end of the day, the people who are here in line, they have sympathy and empathy, but at the same time, like the disaster that is occurring here is just really difficult to stomach when you're paying so much for lift tickets, which is a whole problem that we're going to talk about in and of itself. So it's making national news, and it's just simply a tough pill to swallow when you have a very few number of lifts running and there's a legitimate powder day going on. And the patrollers and the operations, I think they probably have legitimate complaints, but this isn't about the labor issue necessarily. But there was a deal that was reached, and so this is very topical. But my interest really is the way that Vail Resorts has been handling this, because the relationship between the people who actually use the mountain and visit the mountain day to day, weekly, yearly, whatever it is, and the ownership has been something that's the subject of silly movies like this. But the way that the companies that are owning these mountains have handled ski ticket pricing, most of us would say it seems like it's way off. And it seems like it certainly isn't the right thing when the experience isn't necessarily better, or it might be outpacing inflation significantly. And, this leads to people asking, is Vail Resorts done? Where is their revenue even going? And so in a chart like this, what we're seeing is that they are making money. Mountain profit, the EBITDA at the bottom there is, $823 million in 2023. And, there is operating profit that's being pulled here. It's not like they're losing money. So having these situations occur as a user is simply unacceptable. And in their own press release, in their own financial report that you can find online, they talk about how fourth quarter resort reported EBITDA declined from prior year expectations, driven by underperformance in our Australian winter business. And regardless of what you think about EBITDA, the people in Park City don't care about your other locations. If you're a local or you're visiting a certain place and this larger company owns all these other things, and you're suffering in line for hours and hours with only a few lifts available, you really don't care about their bottom line or what's going on in Australia, which, to be completely honest, I didn't even think really had skiing. So I've seen this happen in other businesses when, as you expand, as you own different locations in different cities, managing the quality of each one is really hard to do. And again, I was working at a company where this became a problem, where the question often was, why is our facility producing so much income while also being taken care of the least while you put money into other places? It's a difficult problem. I'm not saying it's not. But I think it's something that as we all put businesses together, and as I work with businesses who are growing and expanding their footprint, it's a real issue to consider how we want to handle it and make sure that we're taking care of the core locations. So what Vail Resorts is saying in their own 2024 financial statement is that while results underperformed our expectations, which those expectations could be we want to double, it could be we want to triple, it could be whatever they want. Expectations are not reality. We were pleased to see 15% revenue growth versus prior year. Year on year growth has become this thing that, yes, we all want to improve. We should all want to improve personally. We should all be trying to get a little better every day. Like, that's the way I genuinely look at life. But at what point is this not okay as a business when your customers are paying out of the nose and not getting enough for it? So, this idea that yes, we're making money, but it's not enough money. Who is deciding that? It's the people who own your business, the people who put the money in and want a return on it. So, yes, you need money, but consider where it's coming from. Because the other aspect of this is that the yield percentage, and this is an earlier chart, but I think it shows the trend, is that even though they're charging so much more, the yield, meaning what they're getting out of it, still isn't rising. And you can see this in their stock price over the last 5 years, where it's not an all-time low, but it's way off of the all-time high. So what's the whole point of this if everyone is angry with you, except with a few people who either got paid out when this happened or may get out or whatever it is? In most cases, from what I can tell, there's a few people who make a lot of money and everybody else is kind of left holding the bag. So how is it that we want to be spending our lives? Making money is part of life. You have to make money to do things, buy things. But what is the way that we judge success? So how do we balance these opposite things? The idea of profit versus service, community versus self, long-term versus short-term, security versus exploration. And depending on what type of business you are, if you're public and nonprofit, you're going to have different concerns and priorities in terms of long-term, service-oriented community, exploration. Yes, we need some short-term money so that we can live and define our own agenda. We need some security, but is that our biggest consideration? If you're a family or a sort of generational business, you're probably in a similar way, but maybe you're a little more self-interested. You have a little bit more focus on exploration or whatever it is. And Harvard Business Review points out, buying to sell a company creates a much higher return on investment than when a public company is practicing the process of keeping a company over the long term. And that falls into the no kidding category of life. But the results that we're seeing, I think as a user, I think we really have to continue to question. And I think more and more this is the case, because if the focus is on a short-term, profit-oriented, self-interested result, then where do we fall as the community of users? And is there innovation here? Is there service? Is there much of any of that? When the stated goal for a lot of these companies is to acquire exceptional, highly recognizable consumer brands, which is what's on the homepage for this website. Their job is not to make impact on their community. Their job is to gobble up other businesses. And it's this sort of cookie monster approach. And part of the way they do that is by shifting the goalposts, changing priorities, and shifting revenue targets overnight based on whatever they want. Again, expectations, just like the Vail Report's financial statement called out. The business school at Cal Poly did a study on this, and they were looking at what happens after a significant capital structure is changed. So what happens to the company? Is the degree of financial distress higher? And in fact, it is. They studied nearly 500 companies that went through this, and the rate of bankruptcy went from 2% up to 18%. So that's 9 times more likely that you're going to go bankrupt, according to that Cal Poly report, which is cited in many places, including the New York Times. And we see this in other industries, where in surfing, groups where these companies are gobbling up companies, putting them together, just collecting them. And companies like Hurley, for example, which was started by Bob Hurley and had an identity, end up basically kicking them out as things are changing and priorities are changing. And so what ends up happening, and what's happening right now, is the next round of companies that they're putting together often have a very different focus on their homepage, talking about serving the next generation, not just the shareholders. We need to make money to survive as businesses. That's not the problem. The problem is, how far do we go when this is the result? And what I can say is that it's not necessary to work that way. It's not necessary to take the money and change your goals, change your priorities, change the company that these people invested in to a different set of goals. And the only people who end up really getting hurt by that are often even the original founders. A few people make a lot of money, and everybody else is left wondering, where'd my spot go? More and more, as we see companies focusing on profit above all, it's simply not necessary. I work with so many companies who have quality investors, who have goals that are aligned. Part of that is 100% making profit. To make profit means you can dictate the terms of what you want to focus on, who you want to help, what you want to explore. That is not the problem. The problem is when it doesn't translate. You keep hammering your customers for higher fees and they're not getting enough on the other end, or they're not getting what they want. And guess what? When you look at Vail Resort's stock price, that's probably a part of what is impacting that, is that people are pissed. People aren't happy. So what's the point if your investors aren't happy? Because yes, we're making money, but it's not enough money. And the people are, yes, we're paying lift tickets that are outpacing inflation by many times over, but we're still then waiting in these huge lines because you can't sort out your labor disputes because you're not paying your people enough, at least, potentially. I think that we're at a bit of a reckoning here. What I'm saying is that it's not necessary to do it that way. So find good investors, be careful where your money's coming from. And that's really what we're here to talk about today. I'll see you in the next video.